Okay, everyone, I promise this will be much quicker as at this point we now have blood returning back to the lungs and back to the alveoli, and we are now going to have the exchange of gases from an external respiration perspective, where oxygen is diffusing from the alveoli into the blood and carbon dioxide is diffusing from the blood into the alveoli, as the image over here is showing. So essentially, what's happening is the reverse of what was happening during internal respiration. So same reactions of internal respiration take place in reverse. Take place in reverse. Now you might think, what drives this? How does the body know? How do these substances know? They're going in this direction here, but they're going in the opposite direction here, and that goes back to the comment about the importance of temperature and pH. The importance of temperature and pH driving specific reactions. All right, and so if you recall down deep within the tissues, the temperature is warmer, pH slightly more acidic. When blood enters into the tissues of the lungs and in the regions of the alveoli, the temperature drops a bit. So the temperature is more around 37 degrees Celsius, and the pH is less acidic, even more basic, the pH of the blood being around 7.4. And so these create or cause changes in hemoglobin's affinity or lack of for CO2 and O2. So increases affinity for, well, in the order, I guess, it decreases the affinity hemoglobin has for CO2, causing it to release CO2, but the conformational changes in hemoglobin lead to an increased affinity for oxygen, and hemoglobin begins picking up oxygen. So let's look at the reactions in reverse. So first off, we would have, and maybe I'll start with carbon dioxide, since the body has to, the blood cells have to release carbon dioxide before they can pick up oxygen. So if you remember, one of the primary ways carbon dioxide was dealt with in the tissues was it was picked up by hemoglobin, and so it's being carried by hemoglobin, and so this hemoglobin now releases that carbon dioxide, and again, that carbon dioxide is being released because of these differences in temperature and pH, and so we can see as it's released, concentration, the partial pressure, of CO2 in the blood would end up being quite high, and this would drive the diffusion into the alveoli where the CO2 would be low. So there's our first reaction in terms of dealing with carbon dioxide. The second reaction occurring in the red blood cell is that big long reaction that's going to now happen in reverse, where we have a lot of our carbon dioxide being carried in this bicarbonate ion. All right. And that reaction now happens in reverse, where the hemoglobin, and maybe I'll add this over here. Remember that the reduced hemoglobin, and maybe I'll put this in red, but remember that as the pH of the tissues dropped, as there was this increase in H+, that H+ was bound to hemoglobin. Hemoglobin was acting as a buffer. Well, now those changes in pH and changes in temperature cause the release of that H+, restoring hemoglobin back to its original condition to be able to pick up oxygen, but this released H plus combining with HCO3 minus now drives the reaction in the opposite direction, producing again H2CO3, which then is broken down into CO2 and H2O. And again, remember that enzyme carbonic anhydrase catalyzing this reaction in the reverse now, leading to our CO2 being taken out from that bicarbonate ion and again released into the alveoli. And then finally, there's just the CO2 that remained dissolved in the plasma. So within this fluid of the plasma, we have CO2 that is somewhat dissolved, and it's simply by diffusion from high pressure in the plasma to low pressure of CO2 in the alveoli diffuses from high to low from the plasma to the alveoli and is exhaled out. So we have all those reverse reactions just taking place. And again, don't forget this important reaction of the reduced hemoglobin, which now when we look, we have the hemoglobin free, and over here we have the hemoglobin free. And so this free hemoglobin, as the capillary passes over the alveoli and oxygen is diffusing from high concentration in the alveoli, right? We've just taken a big breath in, inhalation, and then oxygen diffuses, and we have O2 being picked up by free hemoglobin, producing what we call oxyhemoglobin, and being carried off to our tissues. Much shorter to cover that, but again, going back and the start is, we have to go through quite a bit more to get the entire concept. And now when we move, it's just the reverse happening. Had we started this way, it would have been more, going back the other way, much less. So main thing is that you must know and understand all of these chemical reactions involving the exchange of CO2 and oxygen. So now I hope you can appreciate the complexity of things, that, it's just not the simple diffusion of O2 and CO2. And again, to emphasize why that is, the fluid of the plasma that is primarily what that is, the water is the solvent. It just simply does not allow much O2 or CO2 to dissolve in it. So there needs to be these alternative ways to carry oxygen and carbon dioxide to maximize the exchange of these gases to support the cell, to support the functions going on in the cell, and ultimately to support a massive multicellular organism such as us. Okay, that's it, and we will see you on Monday.